Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Die Artist Murder, Godlike, out September 15th on Human Warfare. This album has 10 tracks, 40 minutes in length, and this is the band's 6th full-length studio album. They are an Australian deathcore band. From a design point of view, the album doesn't overcomplicate things. It feels very streamlined. 10 songs, 40 minutes helps that process. But normally when you have that kind of duration and those many tracks, the album also feels a little bit condensed, like it's squeezed in. Not the case here. Enough nuances on a song-by-song basis that allows the album to be balanced, or to feel balanced, to feel very cohesive from start to end, but still be very dynamic and having enough room to breathe on a song-by-song basis. This obviously increases the playability of the record, makes the album feel more dynamic, more fluid, more engaging, and obviously more entertaining. As far as the sound is concerned, this is a record that connects the past while opening doors towards the future. The key DNA of the band is alive and well on this record. That chunky sound, that tonality as far as the guitar riffs are concerned, the overall brutality of the record, how heavy it is, the social commentary on the lyrics, and the consistency of CJ's vocals. All of these elements are elements that have been moved from record to record across time, and this album didn't break mold as far as those specific elements are concerned. Where it started to break a little bit beyond what we could expect from the band, and looking forward towards what the future will bring for Die Artist Murder, is how big some of these songs are without necessarily using the heaviness in order to create that volume, in order to create that size. Some of the tracks on this album have a lot of atmospheric elements in them, and those atmospheric elements in them really allow the overall experience to feel a lot broader, making the tracks expand themselves and feeling like they have a lot more to give. They have depth, they have substance, they have texture. This is a slight departure from where we've seen the band before, and I think it's the first thing listeners will notice when going through this album. The album sounds like Die Artist Murder, but there's a few songs that makes you feel quite differently towards it, because it's hard to pinpoint exactly where the differences are, considering how consistent the commonalities are and how they come forward on a track-by-track basis. But those atmospheric elements definitely start to set the tone for what this band could do even better going forward, or allowing them to be better defined in the overall processes of the band. Definitely having an impact there. Now, as far as the guitar sound is concerned, while it's consistent with the past, there are some new elements on this record that allow them to feel a little bit more free of the chains of thickness, the chains of tonality, and the chains of brutality. They still sound heavy at times, they still sound brutal at times, they still sound driven at times, but the consistency in which those elements are delivered is what's changing on a track-by-track basis. Always coming back to the original formula, always coming back to the original format, allows you to feel connected with the experience and not necessarily feel jolted by the changes in nuances and sound execution and end result. This is really important for the overall guitar sound. Also, being a little bit more texture on the guitars definitely improves the quality of the sound and the quality of the experience. Solos really well put together. Breakdowns when you needed them, not always going towards them as an expected element of the tracks, breaking away from that formula, if you will. Changing the melody of the guitars, allowing them to be chunky on one hand, to be heavy on the other, but also at the same time having an underlying melody that allows that chunkiness, that allows that heaviness to be a little bit easier to digest at times and be wanted as well. You don't want an album to be consistently heavy from start to finish. It overburdens the listener. It becomes repetitive. Allowing these underlying melodies, allowing these underlying atmospheric elements to start to dictate a little bit more texture on the guitar sound all around, it makes the guitars richer. It makes it a lot more fun to listen to the record from a guitar standpoint. It's not linear from start to finish. You don't feel like everything that's coming at you becomes predictable. The album becomes a little bit more volatile, a little bit more chaotic, but always controlled by the boundaries that the band set, not just for the record, but for the overall design of each and every single song. And that is the mobility that this album has, and that is the impact guitar-wise that this album offers. Definitely a change from the past while still keeping a lot of those elements alive and well. It's a blended experience, but one that's done in a very intelligent way that allows the listener to enjoy these new elements, enjoy these new nuances without feeling completely detached from what brought the band to this point. Now, as far as the drums are concerned, I love the sound, I love the consistency, I love the depth, a lot of that big volume, and even giving the song some room to breathe. It's also coming from the drum sound and how they interact with the guitar elements in the mix. Obviously the drums are heavy, obviously the drums offer a lot of brutality in these tracks, but they also give the songs, the baseline, the necessary baseline for them to have those other elements coming in and changing ever so slightly the nuances of the tracks and the DNA and texture that they offer. I honestly thought the drum sound overall was on point. It had great quality, it had great substance, easy to listen to, easy to detect, and almost becoming the heartbeat of this record on every single track. You feel it in your chest when you're listening to it. Now, vocals on this album, CJ is very consistent. He didn't change his approach. He's not reinventing the wheel, and I felt like it was perhaps the most consistent element, or the one that connects better with the previous albums as far as everything is concerned when it comes to all of the elements, all the pieces of the puzzle that make Godlike be what Godlike is. So his performance was on point. He has a great delivery, he has a great tone, he has a great sense of aggression, direction, moving around, and also emphasizing the lyrical content and that social commentary that's such a huge part of who Diarte's Murder is. This album, he felt perhaps a little bit more free. He felt a little bit more loose. It felt a little bit more organic to me. But overall, it was a very consistent experience, one that connected really well with everything I heard from him and everything I've heard from him with the band in the past. Perhaps the one that stayed connected the most. All around, it sounds like Diarte's Murder, it feels like Diarte's Murder, but as you listen to this album, there are key points that you're going to be like, wow, this is an interesting take by Diarte's Murder of their own sound. So it's an album that allows you to digest those moments better because of how well integrated it is in the overall DNA of the band. It's an album that you could see doors opening as far as where they can go in the future, but not closing the doors completely on who the band was in the past. This is really important. You have to be strategic when you start to change some of your elements, when you start to grow, when you start to look at making some moves, not just completely abandon what made you who you are, but rather integrating those elements in a more manageable way into the record, so everything comes at you feeling very easy, like everything belongs together, and not force feeding the listener things that the listener perhaps doesn't want to be force fed with. As far as favorite songs are concerned, let me start off with Blood Throne. Man, chunky guitar sound, chunky drums, chunky overall heaviness. The vocals enhance the overall aggression that this track has, and then the chorus is very groovy. The chorus has this grooviness to it that really helps stand out from the heavier side of the verses. Having backing vocals, having some layers, really enhances that groove that the chorus has, but it also makes the chorus very memorable, very hooky, if you will, while still keeping that heaviness alive and well. But it's definitely more brutal. It's a more brutal song in the verses, more driven, thicker, and then pushing it into the chorus, allowing you to feel a little bit brighter, allowing you to feel a little bit more grooviness, allowing you to stretch out, breathe. The song breathes a little bit better in that chorus, and it's a track that sees a sense of progression as well. The last verse is perhaps one of the heaviest on the track, which leads you into the chorus, allowing the chorus to even stand out more because of that heaviness that preceded it. Great track all around. Next we have Everything Unwanted. This is one of my favorite songs. I would say top two. I mean, I'm giving you my favorite three, but this one is either one or two on my list of favorite songs that this album offers. And I think the reason for it is the elements, the nuances that this track has are really interesting to me. First of all, I felt like this was a very atmospheric track. Not the most, but one of those that starts to define what that atmosphere needs to be, and including some melancholic elements into it. The clean guitars really allows you to feel a somberness to the song. That melancholy becomes a lot more visible, a lot more noticeable because of how those clean guitars introduce it to the track. Now, the track doesn't stay that way. The track gains brutality, the track gains heaviness, both musically and vocally. But the underlining of that opening, the underlining of that mood, the underlining of that melody, of that atmosphere, it's always there, and it comes up to the surface in the chorus. To me, this is a great way of connecting the dots. You introduce the song with that sort of vibe, with that sort of atmosphere. You take it away with the brutality of the song coming in, hitting you hard, as Die Artist Murder has always been known to do. And then you dissipate that brutality. You allow it to dilute itself a little bit by bringing in that same feel that you had at the opening of the track with every single chorus. This is a great way of creating ebbs and flows. This is a great way of creating movement. Then you have a great guitar solo that also matches that same vibe, that same somberness, that same melancholic nature, allowing the track to have this sense of darkness that really encompasses it. And that darkness becomes a little bit even more noticeable in the middle bridge that the song has, bringing back that same opening, but allowing that same opening now to feel even darker, to feel even more more in the forefront, if you will, easier to see. It's no longer a sensation. Now it's something that you can physically see and appreciate, and then you start to feel a blend of the worlds. As the track approaches the last third, you start to see that brutality that we saw in the beginning blended in with that melancholy, with that somberness, with that darkness, with that melody that really transports it, and the atmosphere that becomes part of it. The song becomes super textured as it ends. You saw pieces of it. The pieces of the puzzle were being put together in the first 2/3 of the track, and then in the last third of the track, the puzzle was completed, and it was about enjoying what the final picture was in front of you. Great track from this perspective. Last but definitely not least, Bermuda. This is an interesting song. It's an interesting song because it breaks the mold when you look at every track that leads into this one. This is the last song on the album. There's no other track like this, and this is almost an exclamation mark because of how it sounds and how it feels coming at the end of the album, but it also feels like a cliffhanger at the end of the album because it makes you wonder, man, is the next record going to continue down this line? Is the next record going to pick up where this song left off? Because this track offers different elements. It has some industrial elements, some electronic elements, a mixture of the two as the song starts, creating a very super atmospheric experience, an atmospheric experience that never really dissipates, it never really goes away. It may lower itself, it may smooth itself out, but it doesn't completely go missing from the song. And this allows the track to be more melodic. It allows the track to feel a little bit more introspective. It still has the ability to push the vocals forward, and the vocals jump off because everything else feels so subdued that the vocals are able to just on their own kind of take charge and take the lead. But the heaviness eventually creeps into the track, and that heaviness starts to take shape as far as the song is concerned, but never really disconnecting from that melodic atmospheric experience that remains from start all the way to the end. If I had to explain this song to someone who has never listened to the track, I would say that this is a deathcore atmospheric ballad. That's how it comes across. It has that moment of heaviness, that climax, if you will, that heavy metal ballads normally do. They're always very melancholic, and then the chorus is where you see the burst of energy. Some of them, even in the chorus, don't completely burst out. They have that one moment that is the breakout moment, that's the climax. So this song is kind of built that way. It builds towards a single climax, not having multiple climaxes with each chorus. So it builds towards a single climax. It breaks out at that end, but it continues the atmosphere right after. It continues the somberness right after. It continues with the darkness right after. I really enjoy this track because of how calm it is at times, how introspective it is at times, and how explosive it becomes. Great track to finish off the album, and like I said, it's not only an exclamation mark on this record, it's definitely a cliffhanger for what the next album holds. This is it. Die Artist Murder, Godlike, out September 15th on Human Warfare. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.